All right. I want to tell the story of Keanu Reeves through the movies Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. And this is another piece of synchromystic storytelling. And the way I like to go about it is I follow an actor through different roles. And when you do that, you can see some pretty interesting things. Um, and you do that not necessarily by how the movies are the same as much as it is how the symbols within the movies and maybe some of the subplots of the movies are the same and they're linked together through the same actor. And this isn't necessarily true for all films within the actor's filmography, but usually it's connected to with significant roles. So for Keanu Reeves, let's first look at his name. I remember once reading a long analysis about his lineage, and I don't recall specifically what it said, but I remember what I was thinking at the time and my feeling, and I was like, wow, that's kind of deep. So you could do a little bit of research on that. But I wanted to get to the phonetics of his name. Um, I think that there's a real reason or a logical reason why he's named Keanu, but regardless of what that is, his name has two different primary sounds: the ki and anu. And from the Sumerian mythological record, their two gods, their god of the sky was known as Anu, and his goddess, his partner was Ki. So we have the male and the female joined together in the name Keanu, and this is also where we get the Anunnaki from as well. So that in itself is interesting, and at the end of this video, I will kind of link it all back together. So let's go and look at Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and The Matrix. And I'm really interested in the first Matrix film. I think there were three of them. I've seen one and a half of them. Uh, and then Bill and Ted's. Bill and Ted's is probably the movie that really introduced Keanu Reeves to the American public, and I'm not certain how old he is, but he's a teenager, early 20s in this film. And then 10 years later, The Matrix was released, and this movie was, at the time, it was just not only like a blockbuster, but it also changed. It also changed the way which films were made, like the effects that were done in the film, and then also kind of like its strange sort of like it was like porn violence, the way it would show the different sort of the characters dodging bullets, and that really introduced a whole new kind of stylistic presentation of movies. I don't know, but that all started with The Matrix, and I don't even want to get into like what The Matrix is about. Is it literal? Is it symbolic? I don't know about that. So I'm going to go on a different level, and I want to show you how these two are connected. And the most obvious has to do with the use of the phone booth. It plays a very, very significant role within both of the films. If you're not familiar with Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, it's about a couple of kids, and they get and they time travel, and they time travel through this phone booth. And within The Matrix, I'm assuming most people have seen that. The characters are able to enter the Matrix or leave the Matrix through the phone booth. And so we see that the phone booth represents this vehicle for transiting And it's interesting because the first one, Bill and Ted's, it's time, and then the Matrix, it's more like a dimension. It's like one above the other, and I guess time is a dimension. So they're similar, but they're a little bit different. But that's an obvious connection there. And then it gets even more interesting because in both of these films, there are characters, these kind of like father figures who guide the Keanu Reeves character. And in Bill and Ted's, he had a partner. He was Ted, Theo. You know, that's what Ted is short for Theodore. And he had his partner Bill. And in The Matrix, it was just Keanu as Neo. So we've got Bill and Ted, and they are taken under by this character here, played by George Carlin, and his name was Rufus. And then we have the same sort of scenario, similar scenario, not exactly the same, but similar scenario with Lawrence Fishburne here, who plays Morpheus. And again, just like the sounds of the name Rufus and Morpheus, there's a phonetic similarity, and phonetics is really, really important. But you could even see they're dressed alike. Here we've got Morpheus. He's got more or less he does have a shaved head, and he's always with his sunglasses, and he's got an overcoat, and he's dressed real sharp. And then we've got George Carlin's Rufus, and it's very, very similar. He's got his hair is pulled back, but it's a lot of forehead. It's very similar. He's always wearing glasses, and he's always got on this trench coat, and he's looking sharp. So it's like they're the same sort of character. And I'm not necessarily suggesting this was done on purpose. Maybe it was. Maybe it was done as a goof, like an Easter egg. But when we're working at the deeper levels, what is done consciously is not necessarily the reason why things are done. That's the whole nature of a Freudian slip. But anyway, so I don't know if these were done purposefully or not done purposefully, but what we do know is that it happened, and it's happening on so many levels that it has weight, it has substance to it. So the storyline gets interesting in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. And if you hadn't seen it for a long time, and if you have like a memory of seeing it as a child, it's pretty much like you'll remember like there were these funny scenes where they would go back in time and then meet like Socrates and Napoleon, and those are the memories which are most strong in most minds. But there was a scene in there, and so I watched this movie a handful of years ago. I want to show it to my boys. It was like age appropriate for them, and I was really blown away when I saw this particular portion of the movie, and I don't have a clip of it which I can show here, but I encourage you to go and. If you're interested, maybe go watch the movie and you want to see this one strange scene. So the character Rufus was more or less answering to these three, this high council. And it is this guy here who is the leader, who then kind of like it links back with Morpheus also, because they're both black dudes and they both have sunglasses on. You could see in this particular instance, they have the same expression. This actor was actually, what's his name? Like Clarence. He was the saxophone player for Bruce Springsteen. In fact, all three of them were popular musicians in the 80s. This guy's from the Tubes and she was from the Motels. But they were like the leaders, and it's from the future, but it really isn't told. You're not told anything about this future. And they send Rufus back to find Bill and Ted because there's something which they need to do in order for a certain destiny, a certain timeline to come into fruition. And that's always just kind of like in the background of the plot of this movie. Like if you watch it, as I said, like what you remember is like the hijinks of like traveling in time. But the whole thing is based upon Bill and Ted doing it's actually a project. That's what they have to do, doing this project. And then that enables them to continue down a particular journey where sometime in the future, they become very, very significant. It's never explained why they're significant. It's just that they are, and everyone treats them like in this godlike way. And that's very, very similar to Neo in The Matrix. So let's go, what other slides do I have here of that? Okay. So there's also a similarity between the three characters. So you got the black dude, you got the white lady, and you got the balding white dude here. And not exactly in the same sort of relationship, but similar. Like Morpheus was definitely the leader, and this guy's definitely the leader. And then you had Trinity right here, who was his right hand, and she's his right hand. And then you got Cypher, Lucifer, the rebel, maybe more like a Judas because he turns his back on him. So this guy's not trustworthy right here. But that's another similarity which we see. So what's interesting is, and I don't really have anything to go with this, and maybe this is explored in the later Bill and Ted's movies, and I haven't seen them, but Bill and Ted become musicians, like famous rock musicians, but they seem to transcend that to become more than just like an entertainer, and their band was called Wild Stallions. And horses are certainly significant, but I don't really have, on my radar is like there's something there, but I don't have anything fleshed out. But I do want to bring out another interesting point or similarity within these two movies before we get to maybe what this is all about. The other part would be looking at this scene from The Matrix and comparing it to a very, very similar scene to in Bill and Ted's. So in The Matrix, this is in the beginning, Neo, who is the one, and Neo is an anagram of one as well, he is contacted by Morpheus when he was in his office cubicle, and he's hiding from like the police, from the agents, from the Sentinels, I think that's what they were called. And he's being guided through the phone, outside of the Matrix, like what to do and where to go. And he's ducking and hiding in this farm of cubicles. And the exact same scene, or not the same scene, but very, very similar, the same concept happens in Bill and Ted's. And so there's this part in Bill and Ted's where they need to go and break out some of the characters or the historical figures, what they did was they went back in time and took historical figures, and then they brought them to a presentation at school, and then the characters, they got arrested and they have to break them out of jail. That's kind of like the setup of the scene. So what we see is Bill and Ted right here, and they're breaking into the sheriff's office to go and free the historical figures. And it just so happens that the sheriff is Bill's father. And so that also is, another theme which we see in these movies is particularly the father, the Saturn role. All of that is important, but we're not going to go that deep into that now. What we're interested in is the fact that now they're in a police office, and what they have to do is, you could see right here, they're like sneaking around and they're hiding from cubicle to cubicle. And then at one point they duck right here. I think this is where they duck. You could see them hiding right here behind this desk as people walk by. And then from the fax machine right here comes a fax from themselves from the future, which tells them to duck, which is very, very similar, because in the Matrix, you got Keanu talking on the phone right now to Morpheus, and Morpheus is telling him through the phone like to duck. The guys are coming. So you could see there's this like similarity. We're seeing all of these etheric lines connecting these films that are telling us like there's a connection. You also see it just in the similarity of the archetypes. I said this is the father figure right here, and we see like the sentinel right here, and this was his boss, Neo's boss from this scene. You know, before this, he's talking to his boss, and it's this actor, and you can see they all have like this general similarity in terms of how they are presented. And so that's like what we want to kind of begin this presentation with. I mean, that in itself is pretty interesting in my opinion. But the second part is what this is talking about, and particularly from an esoteric and mystery religion perspective. And it's at this point I'm going to cut off the YouTube analysis, and the remainder of the video is just going to be available on my Subscribe Star page.